up at the local adult store, there was this cute, thin, young black dude walking around, and he walked past me and said, "You suck?" And I said, "Yeah." And we went into a booth, and I stripped and knelt between his legs, and he took out his big black dick. It must have been 10 inches. And on the thin side and the rock hard, I sucked him for at least a half hour while he watched videos, and finally he put a huge load down the back of my throat, and I just kept spurting and spurting, and his cock was throbbing and pulsating hard. And it was great because not many guys come that hard, and when I left, there was a big smile on his face. And then there was another black guy leaning against the wall outside a booth. And he was stroking his crotch, and I walked up to him and put my hand there, and I felt his sweet hard meat, and I dropped to my knees, unzipped him, and he took out his cock, and he grabbed me by my hair and told me to lick it, and I looked up at him while I kissed and licked and sucked his hard black cockhead, while a couple of other guys watched him use me, and he asked, "Do you like that?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do anything you want." And he said, "Anything?" I looked up at him, and with his cock in my mouth, he nodded yes. He took me to a booth and told me to get naked, and I did as he asked, and if I liked getting fucked, and I said, "Sure." And he took me and put on a condom while I lubed my hole, and he stood me up and turned me around, and I spread my ass cheeks, and he was tall, plus his cock was about 7 inches and stood straight up, so I had to stand on my toes to take him inside me, and he shoved it into me and started pounding me hard, and I begged him to make me his bitch and give me his cum, and he shoved it into me and pulled it out, and I took off the condom and continued fucking me bareback. It wasn't long before he filled my cunt with his load. After I cleaned off his cock with my tongue and left, I took some pics of my pussy fucked with his cum dripping out of me. After the black dude finished with me, I was walking by a booth, and the door was open, and a white guy was sitting there stroking his cock, so I went in, knelt naked between his legs, and made love to his cock, sweet and slow, for a long time, and he loved it. And then he stood up and put me so the back of my head was against the wall of the booth, shoved his cock in my mouth, and fucked my mouth hard, pounding me so hard so I would gag, and he finally shot his load down my throat. After the white guy finished using me, I came out of the booth, and the black guy who had fucked me was waiting for me. He said, "Come on, Kevin, I want to fuck you again," and he took me in the booth and got me naked and put me on my back on the bench with my legs in the air and made me beg for it. And then begged him to fuck me and give it to me in the ass, and my pussy was all his any time, and he wanted it, and he told me to beg louder. So everyone else outside, and he pounded my hard, and the whole booth was shaking, and he came and said, inside and said, "I gotta go," and left me there on my back with my raw pussy dripping his second load. After 5 minutes later, another black guy came in, and I went up to him and fondled the bulge in his pants, and we went into a booth, and I stripped him, and he sat on the bench and took out a gorgeous 8-inch cock, and I took him in my mouth and sucked him, and he reached over and fondled my ass, so I knew that what he wanted. So I stood up and turned around and sat on his cock and rode him for a while. Then he stood up and turned me around and bent me over and ran his cock into me, slamming my pussy, and when I begged for his load out loud, every time he thrust me into me, my head hit the wall of the booth, making a lot of noise until he loudly groaned as he drained his sperm into my ass. After all that, I sucked off a couple more white guys.